"You can't do this," my mother's voice shrieked, echoing off the high, domed ceiling of the Celestial Spire Planetarium. Her face, usually so composed for public appearances, was blotchy and contorted, spittle flying from her lips. "This is our legacy, our family's life work." My father stood beside her, a hand clutched to his chest like a poorly acted heart attack. "After everything we've done for you, Aurora, the sacrifices, the opportunities, to throw us out onto the street." The bailiffs, two stoic individuals in dark uniforms, merely exchanged glances. One cleared his throat. "Mr. and Mrs. Vance, the court order is clear. Possession is being transferred to Ms. Aurora Vance. You have 2 hours to remove personal belongings, or they will be catalogued and stored." I stood there, a knot of ice in my stomach, trying to ignore the tremor in my hands. This wasn't a triumph. It felt more like an amputation. My brother Orion stood a few feet behind me, his gaze fixed on the polished floor, a silent ally in this impossible war. "Aurora," my father pleaded, his voice cracking. "Think of the optics. Think of what people will say. Our daughter throwing her own parents out of their home, out of the business we built from nothing." I finally met their eyes, the familiar blend of manipulation and genuine hurt swirling within them. "The business you built from nothing?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "Is that what you're telling yourselves now? Because I have a very different set of records." I gestured to the 2 heavy binders I'd placed on the antique reception desk. 17 years of records, actually," my mother scoffed, her eyes darting to the binders as if they might spontaneously combust. "Records of what? Of us raising you? Feeding you? Giving you a roof over your head?" "No, Mother," I said, stepping closer to the desk, running a finger over the worn leather of the binder. "These are records of me paying for your roof, records of me paying for your food, records of me funding every single one of your innovative new ventures that never quite broke even." Their faces went slack, then hardened into masks of indignant fury. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt a flicker of something close to peace. Because this wasn't revenge, it was justice. And it was long, long overdue. It started subtly, as most slow poisons do. My parents, Arthur and Celeste Vance, were dreamers, grand sweeping visionaries who saw themselves as custodians of the night sky, running a quaint, slightly eccentric planetarium in a small, forgotten corner of New Mexico. The Celestial Spire wasn't just their business, it was our home, a sprawling converted observatory with living quarters tucked behind the exhibit halls, smelling perpetually of old paper, ozone, and ambition. From a young age, I was their star pupil, quite literally. I knew every constellation, every nebula, every myth attached to the celestial ballet above us. I was also their built-in labourer, helping set up telescopes for stargazing parties, cleaning the projection dome, selling overpriced novelty glow-in-the-dark stars at the gift shop. It felt like playing a role in a grand adventure. The financial cracks began to show when I was about 14. Dad had a brilliant idea for an interactive exhibit involving holographic projections of alien life forms. It was elaborate, expensive, and didn't quite work. "Aurora, darling," Mom would say, her hand fluttering to my shoulder, "your father just needs a little extra capital to bring his vision to life. Could you loan us some of your birthday money? We'll pay you back, of course." I always did, because they were my parents, because I loved the Spire, because I believed in their dreams. But the loans were never repaid. They just compounded, each new request layered on top of the last. My babysitting money, my allowances, which dwindled to nothing, even my savings for a modest telescope of my own, all went into the bottomless pit of the Celestial Spire's operating costs and my parents' visionary projects. By the time I was 16, they weren't asking for loans anymore. They were telling me what bills needed to be paid. "The electricity bill is due, sweetie. Can you cover it this month? We're a little tight." Or, "Your father needs a new part for the main projector. It's an emergency. Can you use your part-time job money? I found myself working 2 jobs in high school, tutoring calculus and serving sludgy coffee at a roadside diner, just to keep our family afloat. My parents, meanwhile, would host lavish donor appreciation dinners, paid for, of course, with my earnings, discussing their grand plans for the planetarium, completely oblivious, or perhaps willfully ignorant, of the fact that their daughter was bankrolling their entire existence. The real betrayal, the one that hardened something inside me, came during my college applications. I'd always dreamed of studying astrophysics, of truly understanding the cosmos I loved. I got into my dream school with a partial scholarship, but it still left a significant gap. My parents, who had just spent a small fortune on a new 3D mapping software for the Spire that they barely knew how to use, told me, very matter-of-factly, that they couldn't help. "Honey, we're investing in the future of the Spire," Mom explained, as if this was a noble sacrifice on their part. "It's for all of us. You'll just have to take out more loans." The sting of that moment, the raw unfairness of it, solidified my resolve. I did take out more loans. I worked 3 jobs through college, subsisting on ramen and sheer willpower. I graduated at the top of my class with a PhD in rare earth mineral geology, specializing in extraterrestrial samples. A direct path to a high-paying niche career. I was brilliant, driven, and utterly exhausted. And still, the demands from home never stopped. "Aurora, the roof needs repairs on the dome, it's leaking. Can you wire us some funds?" "Darling, the old heating system finally gave out. We're freezing, it's an emergency." "The property taxes are due, Aurora, and if we lose the Spire, it's all over." They never missed a beat, framing every demand as an existential crisis for the family, for our heritage. And I, caught in the web of filial duty, kept paying. Every utility, every repair, every urgent upgrade for the planetarium that was supposed to be theirs. I even paid for Orion's private school tuition because they claimed the public schools weren't good enough for their special son. He was 10 years younger than me, and they coddled him, showered him with gifts, while my every success was merely another source of income for them. The hypocrisy was a bitter pill. I was making good money at my job, analysing lunar regolith samples for a private space exploration company, travelling the world, but it felt like I was constantly treading water, barely keeping my head above the deluge of their demands. My own savings were meagre. My life felt like it wasn't mine. The final straw came when I got engaged to Leo. He was a wonderful, grounded man, completely removed from the chaos of my family. I adored him. My parents, of course, saw him as a new revenue stream. They'd invited us to the Spire for what I thought was a celebratory dinner. Instead, after a bottle of cheap wine, Dad put an arm around Leo, a predatory glint in his eye. "Leo, my boy," he slurred, "you're marrying into a legacy. The Celestial Spire, it's more than just a business, it's a living monument. And it's about to enter a new phase. We've been discussing a substantial investment opportunity, a partnership, really. If you could just help us secure a loan, say $100,000, to expand the gift shop and build a new immersive VR experience, we could offer you a significant share. You'd be part of the family, part of the future." My blood ran cold. They were trying to ensnare Leo in their financial schemes. They weren't just bleeding me dry, they were trying to drag him down with me. Leo, bless his heart, looked uncomfortable, but before he could respond, I spoke up. "That's enough, Dad." My voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a shard of ice. "Leo isn't investing a dime in your future, and neither am I anymore." The dinner ended abruptly. We left in a storm of their wounded indignation. But on the drive home, Leo, sensing my distress, asked, "Aurora, what's really going on? How much have you given them over the years?" That question, so simple and direct, broke something open inside me. I confessed everything. The decades of payments, the emotional blackmail, the never-ending stream of emergencies. Leo listened, his hand gripping mine, his jaw tight. "You need to get out of this, Aurora. You need to protect yourself." And that's when the idea, a quiet, simmering resolve, solidified. I wasn't just going to stop paying, I was going to demand accountability. The secret plan started small, almost like a game. I'd always kept meticulous records for my own expenses, a habit born of necessity. Now I started to categorize their expenses. Every bill I paid, every loan I was guilt-tripped into, every grocery run, every repair, I documented it. Bank statements, Venmo transactions, receipts, even text messages demanding money. I created a sprawling spreadsheet cross-referencing everything. I wasn't just a geologist. I was a data scientist in training, fueled by resentment and a desperate need for freedom. I spent evenings poring over financial forums, learning about forensic accounting, understanding legal precedents for familial financial exploitation. I realized their casual asks, their vague promises of repayment, could actually constitute a verbal contract, especially with a paper trail. Then, one quiet evening, while I was reviewing an old bank statement and muttering to myself about their audacity, there was a tentative knock on my apartment door. It was Orion. He was 18 now, just starting college, and usually kept his distance, caught in the middle of our family's dysfunction. "Hey," he said, looking around my apartment nervously. Can I ask you something?" My guard went up immediately. Was he here for money too? "What is it, Orion?" He shuffled his feet. They're doing it to me now, for my tuition and my car insurance. They told me I owe them for raising me, and now it's my turn to contribute to the family legacy." His voice was low, laced with a familiar mix of anger and resignation. "They even told me I need to help them convince you to chip in for the Spire's new solar panels." My heart ached for him, my little brother, trapped in the same cycle. "They told you that, huh?" I asked gently. He nodded, defeated. "I found some of your old bank statements stuffed in a box in the office, ones that showed you paying for their personal credit cards back when you were in college. I'm not dumb, Aurora. I know what they did to you." He looked up, his eyes meeting mine, brimming with a fierce, quiet desperation. "Can I help with whatever you're doing? I've been keeping track of some stuff too, just not as detailed as you." That was it, the missing piece. A secondary witness, a corroborating voice. My brother, the one they'd always favored, was also a victim. And he was ready to fight. Together we refined the spreadsheet. He dug up old emails, forwarded me text messages, even found some of Dad's handwritten ledgers from years ago that exposed hidden personal expenses masked as Spire maintenance. The evidence became overwhelming. I hired a specialized forensic accountant, not to build the case from scratch, but to review and certify my findings, adding a professional seal to my mountains of data. It was an expensive step, but crucial. Her report was damning. It wasn't just that I hadn't been repaid. It showed that I had financially supported them to the tune of over $200,000 since the age of 14, covering everything from the planetarium's mortgage payments to their weekly groceries, their vacations, and even a luxury watch Dad claimed was a business expense for impressing donors. The final tally, after factoring in a generous estimation of my fair share of living expenses as a minor and young adult, they owed me a net sum of $40,783. When I presented them with the certified forensic accounting report, their initial reaction was laughter. "This is ridiculous, Aurora. You think you can sue your own parents for raising you?" My lawyer, a formidable woman named Brenda, calmly slid a stack of documents across the table. "Mr. and Mrs. Vance, this is a civil complaint for unjust enrichment, breach of implied contract, and promissory estoppel. Ms. Vance is seeking full restitution for the documented expenses she incurred on your behalf, minus reasonable living costs, totaling $40,783 non-12s. And given the overwhelming evidence, we're also seeking punitive damages for emotional distress and legal fees." Their laughter died. My mother turned pale. My father's jaw dropped. Punitive damages for what? Raising our daughter? For coercing a minor to financially support you, for making false promises of repayment, and for systematically exploiting your daughter's income for personal gain, Brenda replied, her voice unwavering. And if we go to court, we will also present evidence of your attempts to involve Ms. Vance's fiancé in your schemes. That last part hit them hard. Their faces were a mixture of shock, fury, and a dawning realization of the depth of the hole they'd dug for themselves. They raged, they denied, they accused me of being a cold, ungrateful daughter. They even tried to paint Orion as a traitor, but he just stood there, silently filming their outburst on his phone. The moral complexity of it all gnawed at me. I wasn't trying to bankrupt them, not entirely. I offered them a chance to settle, to pay back the $40,000 over 5 years. I even offered to drop the punitive damages if they agreed to sever all financial ties and leave me alone. Their response was predictable. "We'll see you in court, you ungrateful wretch. You won't get a dime from us." They truly believed they were untouchable. The lawsuit dragged on for months, a draining, agonizing ordeal. Every court appearance felt like a public airing of our family's dirtiest laundry. They hired a cheap, blustering lawyer who tried to discredit my evidence, claiming I was an estranged daughter with a vendetta, that the records were fabricated. But my forensic report, backed by Orion's testimony and his mountain of corroborating evidence, was unshakable. Brenda systematically dismantled their every argument. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a sympathetic gaze, listened to every detail. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judgment came down. They lost. The court ruled unequivocally in my favor. Not only were they ordered to repay me the full $40,983.12, but the judge also awarded an additional $15,000 in punitive damages, citing a pattern of egregious financial exploitation. And because they couldn't or wouldn't pay, the court placed a lien on the Celestial Spire Planetarium, giving me the right to force its sale to recoup my money. That's what led us back to the Spire today, the day of reckoning. My parents, caught off guard by the finality of the court order, truly believed they could talk their way out of it, plead for my mercy, or simply ignore it. They didn't understand that I wasn't just seeking money. I was seeking freedom. They continued their tirade, their voices cracking with indignation. "This is a betrayal, Aurora. We raised you. We gave you everything." "You gave me a bill," I retorted, my voice firm despite the tremor in my chest. "You gave me a bottomless pit to pour my earnings into. You gave me sleepless nights and endless worry. You didn't give me a childhood, you gave me a full-time job at 14. I picked up the forensic report from the desk, holding it aloft. "This isn't about spite, Mum and Dad. This is about justice, and I'm finally getting it." The bailiffs, ever professional, began to gently guide my parents towards the exit. My mother started to sob, a theatrical, wrenching sound. My father continued to rage, promising legal appeals threatening to disown me. I knew it was an empty threat. They had nothing left to disown me from. Orion stepped forward, a quiet determination in his eyes. "Mom, Dad," he said softly, "it didn't have to be this way. You could have just been parents." They barely heard him, consumed by their own self-pity. As they were finally escorted out, their accusations echoing in the vast dome, I looked around the empty planetarium. The giant projector, now silent, stood like a sentinel. The dusty exhibits, the worn carpets, the faint smell of ozone. It was all here. My childhood, my burden, my future. I didn't want to own the Spire, not really. It carried too many painful memories. But I had secured the lien and the court judgment. I would force its sale, recoup my money, and walk away free. This wasn't about vengeance. It was about severing the chains that had bound me for so long. The Spire would go to a new owner, perhaps someone who would truly cherish its magic, someone who wouldn't let it become a tool of exploitation. As for my parents, they would have to face the consequences of their actions, something they'd avoided for decades. And for me, I would finally have my own stars to chase, unburdened by their gravity. It hurt. It hurt terribly. But the weight that lifted from my shoulders as they walked out of that door was immeasurable. I was finally, truly, free. If you've ever felt like your family was treating you like an ATM, know that you're not alone. Setting boundaries, documenting everything, and fighting for your own financial freedom can be the hardest battle you ever face. But it's worth it. Believe me, it's worth it. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button, share your own experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more unfiltered stories about finding your own light.